Coming to you from an undisclosed location somewhere deep in the heart of Santa Monica Mountains, I am your intrepid host, L.A. Marzulli. Welcome to a very special edition. Our guest today is Mondo Gonzales. I think you'll find it interesting, but first, a word from our trusted sponsor. Folks, gold has surged 46% in less than a year, doubling the gains of the NASDAQ and S&P 500. But this isn't just another rally. Global reserves are shifting, exposing cracks in the monetary system. Investors are losing confidence in paper gold and demanding physical metal, creating a massive gap between gold owned and gold available. But this isn't about how institutions broke another system. It's about how you can profit from it. Right now, Noble Gold Investments has a limited supply of investment-grade gold bars and coins available. As banks scramble to fulfill their obligations, pushing gold prices higher, you can profit. Smart investors are already moving into physical gold. Noble Gold Investments makes it easy for you to do the same. And right now, when you order a qualified investment, Noble Gold will add a free 1/10 of an ounce gold coin to your order. Folks, don't wait until it's too late. Visit noblegoldinvestments.com. That's noblegoldinvestments.com. I will tell you this, folks, there is always a risk in any type of a transaction like this. But Peggy and I did it about 2 years ago, and I have to tell you, I think gold is going to go through the roof. That's conjecture on my part, but check it out. noblegoldinvestments.com, noblegoldinvestments.com. Folks, I got a little bit of house cleaning. As you can see here, this is the tract that we're destroying. There's some stuff that's really wrong with it. There's a link there that's not affiliated with our ministry. And unfortunately, I didn't follow up on this. So if you've ordered tracts, please be patient. We are ordering a number 10,000 with the correct link on there. And as soon as we get these, we'll be sending them out. So if you've got the new tract, and at the end of it, it'll say www.needgod.com. That's not us, and God bless them. It's a great ministry, but it's somehow it got in there, and we won't get into details, but please don't distribute them. Wait until we give you the real ones, and we'll go from there. So thanks so much for watching. If you haven't subscribed, you know what to do. Click the subscribe button. I think we're up about 230,000 people. It's just amazing. And about 10,000 of you a day come here. So I want to thank you for your patronage and for your faithfulness to what we do. Our guest today is Mondo Gonzales. Mondo and I go back to what, 2012?
2014.
2014. Wow. So it's 11 years and counting. So Mondo, you've got a new book coming out on the red heifer. And, we've heard all sorts of reports that because of the red heifer ceremony, that is what instigated the war on October 7th. Whether or not that's true, I've never been able to track it down. What say you?
Absolutely not true. What you see, as we know with Hamas, if you go back to its charter, they don't need a reason to kill Jews. It's in their charter. It's part of their entire method. And so what we do know is that Hamas is one of the greatest, people don't know this, the media doesn't report this. Hamas is one of the greatest proponents of and propagators of propaganda. I mean, they actually they call it, and some people call it Gaza wood, because they seriously will create whole scenarios that dress people up in makeup. They'll put a child there, and they'll do like a whole scene and record it and then play it as if it's a real event from an Israeli bomb or something. And so they've been caught doing this over and over. So I think we need to be realistic that what happened with the red heifers, October 7th happened in 23. It wasn't until January of 24 that they mentioned the red heifers or the red cows. And so they saw it as a great, I think, propaganda tool to try to blame the cows. And so they did. And no doubt they were also very smart, because they brought up the red cows because the ceremony was supposed to take place April of 24. So just, almost a year ago, 11 months ago. And then in the midst of doing that, when they brought up the red cows, it caused all of that to stop. It caused all the halt, because as well, Netanyahu was being squeezed in like squeezed for like a screw, but with Biden. And so by bringing up the red cows, Netanyahu's like, hey, look, and I had heard through my connections that they had permission by the Israeli government early on, right around the fall, October, right around that time. And then that permission was rescinded based on the Biden administration and pressure because Netanyahu, I'll just say this last thing, but Netanyahu knew that he can't allow a religious ceremony like that to take place because it would be so inflammatory. It'd be like throwing gasoline on the fire. Then he'd have to answer to Biden, and they were trying to get their weapons. Remember, they had purchased weapons that they were never able to get. So complete propaganda by Hamas. Actually, it was a very stroke of genius. They really, by bringing in the red cows, it stopped the whole movement.
Well, let me ask you this. We know from the biblical prophetic narrative that the Antichrist, because that's who it is, cuts a deal with the Israelis to build the temple. And a lot of people look at this and they poo-poo dispensationalism. That's all, it's really not literal. It's allegorical. And, the temple is now inside. And I mean, they just tap dance around it till the cows come home. And if that's the case, how do you know what anything is? Both of us are dyed in the wool dispensationalists, premillennial, pre-tribulation rapture. That's what we believe. We also believe in the written word that this guy, whoever he is going to cut the deal and with the Israelis to build that temple. And this is an impossible, right now where we stand. What is it? March 2nd? This is an impossibility. It's never going to happen. And yet, what was written will come to pass. What was foretold will unfold. Your thoughts on the rebuilding?
Oh, absolutely. I think that even politically, as we look at the situation right now, especially the last couple of years, and in the new book, the Mystery of the Red Heifer, I was able to update all these things, these developments that have been happening, because especially even with Trump, I was able to finish the book right after Trump was elected, and also to show what the rabbis and stuff think. So all that being said, what do we know? I actually would say that anybody who's watching this would say there's been no greater momentum. I'm not saying it's next week, but there's no greater momentum than what's happening right now, because Saudi Arabia, which is like the mother of all Islamic power, we know that again they'd like to fight with Turkey and it's certainly the Shiites of Iran, but Mecca and Medina and Saudi Arabia, and now as they're coming to play, they talk in certain ways publicly, but behind the scenes, they're like, we have no problem with the temple in Jerusalem. And they've offered to take over control of the management from the Jordanian
walk, right?
Yep. So right now, I would say, LA, that when people say there's no way in a million years, that everything is changing right in front of our eyes.
And it can change. Let me jump in. It can change in a dime. Look what happened to Syria a couple of months ago. I mean, nobody saw that coming, right? Out of the left field, this thing comes in like a freight train. Assad flees the country. The prisons are empty. I mean, the whole thing turns on a dime. We've both been to Israel. I know you've been a lot more than I have, but I was really struck when I was on the Temple Mount. Most people, the Temple Mount, they think it's an acre or a half an acre. We're talking 40 acres of land. And that one part, okay, so you come in, Alaska is on the right and below you, and then you go down this walkway and you make a left. There's another walkway which goes down. And to your left, as you're walking down this, you see, where people are going, well, they're going to reconvert that. Wait a minute. To the right, where the East Gate is, to the right, there's like, I don't know, 10 or 15 acres at least, of vacant land. And Muslims use it on their high holy days for overflow crowds. But I mean, it's basically vacant. Your thoughts?
And let's remember that we don't have to guess on this. Revelation 11 is crystal clear. John is told to measure the temple and the altar, but to leave the outer courts.
Leave the outer court.
Or to the Gentiles. So I don't think that the Dome of the Rock necessarily needs to be blown up.
I agree.
I know that the two main positions right now is the Dome of the Rock is where the old temple, the previous temple stood, or to the north. But I think what will happen is right now, again, there's theories, but When that agreement takes place between the Antichrist and the Jewish people, one of the first things they're going to do is excavate. They're going to have permission. And so, in a moment's notice, if they were able to excavate on the Temple Mount, which they will be able to determine with 100% certainty. So, I know the strong opinion right now is that it's where the Dome of the Rock is, but potentially, um, archaeology could confirm that, or it could say, hey, by the way, no, it's to the north. And everybody'd be like, oh, wow.
Yeah. Now what?
That.
Yeah.
That's great. If maybe it's to the north, which some people say it is, to the Dome of the Spirits there, is, oh, look at that. Now we don't even have to do anything. We could just build a temple there, and then the Dome of the Rock could stay, that outer court that's given over to the Gentiles, which is exactly what the scripture says.
Which is incredible. Recently there was an article, and I kind of read it here on my show, and I just want to get your thoughts on it. But it was from a Catholic perspective. And this is what's so dangerous, because the Catholic religion, they call themselves Christian, but they are about as far away from what you and I believe as, it might as well be something else. And they talked about there is no millennial. There is no millennial kingdom. We're living in the millennial kingdom right now. So let me see. 2 world wars, the Korean War, the Vietnam War. If this is a millennial kingdom, I'll shave my head and become a Buddhist, which of course I'm being, sort of glib here. But I want you to address that, because we believe in the literal 1,000 years of where Jesus reigns in Jerusalem. And by the way, folks, that's not Walla Walla. He doesn't show up in Michigan, and go, hey, I'm here. It's in Jerusalem. The feet touch the Mount of Olives, and the thing splits in half. See, this is the problem, and this is what I want you to address. Augustine comes in around the 4th century and just, it's all allegory. It's dun da da. And this author in this article that I was reading about, that there is no millennium, that dispensationalists are wrong. This goes back 1,600 years to where Augustine kind of flips the whole thing, and this is where we've got this huge disparity between there is no millennial kingdom, no literal 1,000 years. The Jews have no right, to the land. The church has inherited all the promises, and we hear this like it's in an echo chamber. We hear it constantly. Your thoughts?
2 thoughts here. One is historical, in that Augustine was around 400 A.D. and Constantine, 325, Nicaea, and other things. But look, in 379. Christianity became the official Roman Empire religion, right? So it wasn't Constantine, it was Theodosian later. So, but nevertheless, when you come to that point and you start seeing Christianity as being the power of the world, the great power of the world, but you start looking at the Bible and going, well, hey, before Jesus returns, the great power of the world is evil. Like, what you're doing, I can imagine that would be very difficult and confusing to them. So then they're like, oh, well, okay. And then, of course, Origen began the allegorical method. Augustine picked it up. And so they had to then interpret things in an allegorical way, because for them, it literal didn't make sense. Well, of course, once Rome fell in the 5th century, you start looking around, you're like, oh, and of course, now see, like, he spread it.
Right. Well, now what? And the whole thing goes into the Dark Ages.
And that's it. And so that's the tradition that stays on. But so you have the historical realities of what took place and how it came to be. But secondly, just people open the Bible up. The Bible's very clear. Amillennialism doesn't say there's not a millennium. What they say, even though that's what the word means, what they say is it's not a physical kingdom. So, and of course, they bring scriptures that will speak about the kingdom is right now. Of course, we believe the kingdom is right now in a spiritual way, but that's all they have is a spiritual kingdom, where we believe, according to scripture, that this is a physical kingdom, like you mentioned, Jesus touching on earth. Luke 1:32, that he'll sit on the throne of his father David to Mary. That throne was never in heaven. David never ruled in heaven. That throne is in Jerusalem. Isaiah 11, the wolf laying down with the lamb, the lion eating straw like ox. All these passages, again, allegorically, you can make them to mean whatever you want, but there's nothing in those texts. They will learn war no more. Isaiah 2.
I love that scripture. That's one of my favorites.
Those are literal things. So as we look around at nature, we go, first of all, Jesus isn't ruling there. We don't have a temple, Ezekiel 40 through 48. All these other passages, we expect it to happen as literal. just like the angels told, the disciples, he'll come in the same manner on the Mount of Olives, which, as you mentioned, Zechariah 14 is crystal clear. So the text is overwhelming that if you just take it as normal way, it's physical. And then we understand a theological bankruptcy of allegory.
And this is really problematic because when you sit down, look, I have a lot of relatives who are dyed-in-the-wool Catholics. I mean, that's what they know nothing about the rapture of the church. Who've never heard it. They know nothing about the seed war, Genesis 3:15, which is, thank you, Gary Stearman, but that's the essence of what I do. They have no idea really of what's going on. And you came a little later, but I always look at Augustine as the instigator. I mean, he's sort of a springboard for all of this. So you're going to be talking, and I'll be seeing you in just a few days here at the Prophecy Watchers Conference down in Orlando. Is it sold out, first of all?
It is not sold out. It's getting very close because unfortunately Orlando is one of the smallest venues that we have. And so there's probably, I think, only about 50, 75 tickets left. So if people are interested, I would encourage them to do it. But of course, we also offer the live stream, which, people can prophecywatchers.com. They can scroll down to the banner and see that they'll have all of the 40 messages for a whole year, which, you can watch it when you want. That's often the case. A lot of times people don't even live stream. They just get the package so that they can watch it later.
Yeah, which is great. You don't have to go anywhere. There's no hotels. Hey, honey, bring me a ham sandwich, will you? It's just funny.
Put my feet up. Absolutely.
Oh, well, hey, that's just so misogynistic. Asking your wife to bring you a ham sandwich. So what are you going to be speaking at? And I think I already know, but kind of tease us a little bit.
One of the things that I'm going to be speaking on the millennium, and basically I'm going to highlight what is going to happen between now all the way into the millennium, kind of a chronological perspective, and then our job in the millennium. And you and I have talked about this before, where we in Revelation 19 we come back on white horses.
Love it.
We're called the army. Yeah, we're called the army of heaven, and so you've said it for a long time, the white horse police force, and so. I'm going to discuss that a little bit more. I'm also going to bring up some other scriptures that are not often seen in the sense of what our destiny is. I think truly, if the Christian understood their destiny, they would be so absolutely encouraged beyond belief. And so I'm trying to get those scriptures into people's brains. It just comes back to we have ultimately 1 Corinthians 6:3. Paul says, don't you know you're going to judge or govern the world? Don't you know you're going to judge or govern angels? And so I'm going to talk about that, what it means and what it doesn't mean. But ultimately, we're going to govern angels. What the heck does that mean?
What is that all about? I mean, it's like when I look at that, the armies of heaven are with him on flying. It doesn't say flying white horses, but he's coming in from heaven. They got to be flying somehow. So it's, I just love that. And then I think he dispatches us. I mean, I don't know how many people are in that army. And, we're not fighting. I don't believe we're lopping heads off like, orcs in the Lord of the Rings. I think he destroys them. He just stops holding them all together. That's where I go. He holds all, first Colossians, he holds all things together. He just stops holding all things together. He just goes, I get it. You guys hate me. That's fine. I've given you every chance. Guess what? And this is why they bleed out on that plane. They just bleed out. Why the blood is up to, it sounds like this big chaotic battle. I don't think it's that way at all. I really don't.
He speaks and it's done.
That's it. He speaks and it's done. And then we're with him. And, and how does he do this? Does he have town criers, Mondo Gonzales, paging Mondo, or does he just communicate with you voice to skull? I don't know. I mean, that's conjecture on my part, but I think he goes, Mondo, go to Ethiopia. Aren't you lucky, right? Marzulli, go to Kauai. Of course. But, so you're dispatched, I'm dispatched, and what do? We preach the gospel, we heal the sick, we raise the dead, just like Jesus did. Jesus says, you'll do the greater works. And, he's only here for 3 years in his ministry, and then he goes up. So now we have 1,000 years, and think about it. You got 4 billion. I want you to weigh in on this. You got roughly based on the population today of 8 billion. So half of those people die in the tribulation. This is not a picnic, folks. If you want to hunker down and try to stay through the tribulation, bully for you. We're going up because we're not appointed to wrath. But I digress. But there's 4 billion people on the planet, and they don't know what's going on. They're going, who's this guy on the white horse? Wait a minute, time out. What's going on? Because the TVs are still working, as far as we know. Every eye will see them. Your thoughts?
And moving to the end, that's what I'm gonna highlight the chronology of that, because when you get to Jesus' return, yeah, I believe you're right. There's 4 billion people on earth. How many of those are believers? Very, very,
Very few.
So what we know is that the sheep and the goat judgment, most of that 4 billion is they're unbelievers. They took the mark of the beast, and they go right. They go right into hell. I mean, they do not pass go. They do not enter the kingdom. Only believers enter the kingdom. And so you figure if you had 1 billion left, or 4 billion, how many are believers? A few 100 million, maybe. Most of them have been killed already. So you might only have a few 100 million going into the kingdom to initially start the millennial period. And so that is very small. No doubt all nations are represented. We know that from Zechariah 14 and other passages, but believers begin to live, and then of course they have children. The children aren't born believers. They never have been. So they're in their natural bodies. We are not. We're in our glorified bodies, as we will discuss. And so as they live life now with the king is there. Children are born. They need to hear the gospel. They need to get saved. And so, of course, by the time you get, through the millennial period, you're going to have unbelievers. That you're going to have people that never accepted Jesus or
don't believe him.
Yeah. By the time you get to the end of Revelation 20, there's a short rebellion for a small period of time. And again, there's not some big battle. They gather around Jerusalem, but God just says enough, and it's over.
Yeah, and it's over. You mentioned the mark of the beast, and I have talked about this, and in our Watcher series, actually. We took out an implant from a man who was abducted. And I remember when I started talking about this 26 years ago, my Christian brothers and sisters, laughed at me and thought I was completely crazy. Now we know, because we actually took one out, that these things are real and the abduction phenomena is real. I can't prove this, but there is an evolution of these implants, and I believe these are prototypes to the mark of the beast. They are about the size of a grain of rice. They work off the nervous system, not the circulatory system, which in itself is really weird. The one we took out was 40 years old. You could cut it with a razor knife. The one prior to the one we took out, you couldn't open it. Dr. Roger Lair took it to a lab and had to cut it open with a razor knife. I'm sorry, a laser, not a razor knife, a laser. So we're looking at an evolution of these things. And this is what I want you to weigh in on. Something happens to those people who take the mark, something which is absolutely unprecedented. And I believe their DNA is changed, and I believe they become, this is conjecture, I believe they become modern day Nephilim, the seed of the dragon. Your thoughts?
It's a reasonable conclusion or conjecture, because when we see people take the mark of the beast, it's quite clear that in Revelation 14, that it's so important that people do not take the mark, that God sends an angel. Think about that, supernatural angel throughout the whole world so that nobody has an excuse. And the angel is saying, do not take this mark, because if you do, you'll be moving beyond salvation. And then we ask the question, well, how does somebody move beyond salvation? I mean, I thought it's possible. And so one of the ways, again, we can't be dogmatic on it, but one of the ways would be that they lose their humanity by, because
something happens, something drastic changes.
Yeah, something drastic. And so that's one possibility. At the end of the day, it's a fact. Do not take it, because boom. And we also know in Revelation 17, 13, that the people that take the mark are the ones, I mean, the scripture, people can argue all day long they want about predestination. I'm not here for that. But it says the ones that were not written in the Lamb's Book of Life took the mark. And so it's very much God is sovereign in what's happening there. People who take it are known that they're going to take it. And of course, if they're not in the Lamb's Book of Life, they're not saved. There does not seem to be any hope at all in Revelation 14, 9 through 11, it talks about the smoke of their torment going up and up and up. So there's not even a hint that if you take the mark, well, then you can later repent. And so what you also see too, kind of what you were describing, is one of the judgments of the bowl judgments is that the bowl is poured out on all those, and those who have the mark they start getting a sore, and they start getting pain.
Right.
So there's something, either the body rejects it or God just pronounces a judgment on anybody that took whatever that mark is.
Wow, we certainly are in very, very interesting times. There's no doubt about it. Mondo, I want to thank you for coming on the record here today. It was always great, and we'll see you again at the Orlando conference, folks. Check out the live streaming if there's openings. I strongly, highly recommend it. The speakers are incredible. It's going to be a great romp. Mondo, how can we get the Red Heifer book? When is it coming out?
It is out. We already have copies at Prophecy Watchers, so we have some advanced copies. So the Mystery of the Red Heifer, that people just searched at. Again, it's an updated, revised of all the things that happened in the last couple of years since my first edition came out.
Right.
I'm so glad that Charisma allowed me to redo it, because as we've been watching, things are changing. So prophecywatchers.com. If you want to support Jeff Bezos, you can go to Amazon. It is officially out starting March 4th. But we do have it, again, at Prophecy Watchers right now.
Thanks so much for coming on, Mondo. Before I go, folks, there it is. Runs of Disclosure, the 10-box UFO DVD set. We're the only Christian ministry that has 10 DVDs on the UFO phenomena. Close encounters of the first, second, third, fourth kind, abductions, cattle mutilations, crop circles, the breeding program. It's all there. And finally, what is the truth? Check it out. And of course, Runs of Disclosure. We are on run number 19. And we keep going up. And I'm gonna go out on a limb here. I'm gonna predict by the end of March we're gonna have another run. I'm not a prophet. That's conjecture, but I'm throwing that out there. I think something's gonna happen in March. We're gonna get more information. Mondo, thanks for coming on the record. Really appreciate it. Thank you, folks, for coming here. We'll be back again with another guest tomorrow or another show. Thanks so much. Remember, folks, there's a supernatural world that surrounds us, and sometimes it manifests to people like you and me. Thanks so much for watching.